And this group, by the way, is the group that, as far as I can tell, is the most closely, it's the closest fork in the road. When Francis and the Australian group went to Barber, this is the group that went off from. There are other Sufi groups that have come to Australia more recently, but this is the group that really has its roots with the Baron. I'll just learn how to use Keynote here. So this is, just quickly, this is the Baron's, oh, that is very dark, it's very unclear, isn't it?
Well, we can improve it, David's got the
Okay, it'll make the room hotter, but I guess it's worth it.
Yeah.
Okay. So this furniture was in Mayor House during Barber's visit. Hopefully we'll see in a moment when we black it out. Thanks a lot.
Michael, couldn't we read what was before this? I was starting to read it.
Johanna, just wait. Johanna, just wait. We'll get back to it. Nothing will be missed, maybe.
Coming back.
Just very briefly, on the right, you can. This chair was carved by the Baron's grandfather, and it has the Baron, the von Frankenburg coat of arms, which is a fox, a shield, and 3 bricks. Time permitting, I'll tell you the story behind that, but I think I won't take the time right now to do that.
Whose house was it in when Barbara visited?
At Mayor House. Yeah. And you'll see this table. This is my hallway in Coleroy, but this table appears in some of the photographs towards the end of the presentation. It's a beautiful piece. This is a mantelpiece. It's about 3 meters long. I'm sorry you can't see the detail. There's no focusing involved with this, is there, Jim? Is there a focusing involved? I mean, the text looks focused. This is Steve's mentioned in one of Robert's articles, mentions in passing an Eastern or a Middle European tapestries, and this is one of them. This is an embroidered piece. It's about 4 meters wide by about 3 meters deep, long, deep, and it's a beautiful, beautiful piece. And that was, as I said, hanging in Barber's room at Mayor House when Barber came. So going now to trove.gov.au, the first, there's about 50 articles about the Baron in the newspapers scattered over about 3 decades. This is from the wedding of the parents. So Chris, over to you.
It is said that the marriage of Baron Friedrich Wilhelm von Frankenburg Ludwigsdorf and Miss Jessie Vincent Elliot of Elizabeth Bay, Sydney, took place on the 18th out in St. Paul's Church, San Francisco. I fancy the bride will find the long name of her husband rather inconvenient at times.
So just
For the Australians, yes.
So just a couple of quick comments. Very curiously, the Baron's mother was Jessie Elliot, an Australian woman. Of the family, Elliot and Co., the pharmaceutical company that later became FDA, DHA, sorry, Drug House of Australia. I was back in America there, Alan, for a moment. Very interestingly, they got married in St. Paul's Church, San Francisco, and I have no idea why that's so, why they were in America, why they got married there. Alan was mentioning the area, I forget the context that Alan was mentioning it, but this church is in the Noe Valley North Beach area, which is the Italian, it was the Italian section of San Francisco. And Barber, a couple of links with Barber. Barber came to Coit Tower in 1956, and there's a beautiful footage of him looking out from Coit Tower. I think filmed by Shami and Juice. Those of you who...
You will see a video clip of the church very, very, very near to the same area that has special significance now.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Alan. So will you expand on that when we get to it?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Michael, could I just add something
Yes,
here?
Joanne.
You were saying before about the reason for the Baron coming to Australia in 1927. My understanding from the newspaper articles is that Jesse Elliott stood to inherit a fortune, and that was part of the marriage agreement with the Baron's father. But when Jessie Elliott's father died, she was not allowed to get her inheritance because of the German connection. The inheritance was frozen, and that situation still prevailed even after the end of the war. And Jessie was actually left in quite straitened circumstances. Because even though the Baron had the title, it was Jessie who had the fortune, which she wasn't able to get. And so the Baron actually came to Australia to try and sort that out, to try and get his mother's inheritance for her. That's my understanding from the newspaper articles.
Great. Thanks, Joanne. That's great. Thank you. I just noticed it's 10 o'clock and we're 9:30. We're supposed to finish in 15 minutes.
No, don't worry.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry, be happy. So the next thing chronologically we come across is the Baron's book. I had known about this book for 3 or 4 years, but I'd not been able to find it anywhere, and I'd searched and searched and searched. And finally, when I put it into Google with his full title, that is Ludwigsdorf, and the full title of the book, I finally found it in online in a German library. Wow. Felix, over to you. Felix has kindly translated parts of it.
I'll come up here.
Yes.
So everybody can hear. Judging from the cover, the booklet was published in 1916 in Bern, Switzerland. And the copy recently discovered was kept in Germany in the National Library, Berlin. Its title is How Peace Eventuates, Questions of Conscience and Answers. Somewhere within the text, the author calls it a discourse. Although the booklet was published in 1916 in the middle of World War I, which went from 1914 to 1918, no direct reference is made to the war, though clearly it must be understood in that context. I have translated a few sections to give some sense of the Baron's character and interests. Now thanks to Jeff Gontra, who straightened out the English. The booklet starts with an invocation that calls on divine spirits to descend again and lift the world up to the heavenly sphere. It then continues on page 5. My dear friends, thousands of loved and admirable heroes have now died in a sincere belief that you can fight with weapons for culture. But is not culture a question of understanding, the heart, the highest consciousness and love? How then can one believe to solve such questions with weapons? A little further down. But what can we do about it? Aren't we partly responsible? Things cannot stay as they are. Please have the kindness to not transfer the blame to princes and governments, but let us rather go and get advice where peace is at home. This is inside of us. Let us have courage. The prayer of Christ on the cross, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, is valid also for you. Then on page 7, have you thought about the following? Consciousness, conscience, character, good and evil. Do it right now. And if you find that learning has not sharpened your conscience, why then do you strive for it? Do you need it perhaps so that people believe you and you can make money? Or do you just want to become famous and perhaps have the share of honor that you believe you may rightly claim for you? Better search for the new learning that sharpens the conscience and that serves for the best of all. This learning is from God, not from the pulpit. Then on page 10, the world-sustaining sun will give you, in good time, what is yours. But if you feel that the harvest is too small, then work your soil, sow and wait again. The soil that concerns you most is your body. It must be tilled. As long as you are not perfect, you cannot easily do too much there. We cannot stress this point too much, although we do not want to dwell on it at length. Let us consider this. Neither Jesus, Mohammed, nor Buddha were pig butchers, and the most eminent minds of all times were always observing a careful diet. Who understands this will know what to do. To elucidate, Plato too lives his state as long as it is just, free from butchers and prostitutes, and recommends wheat and barley as foods. If we love our body, we will also love God and keep His commandments. Page 12. Most people suffer from not knowing what they want, either in specific cases or life in general. Such ones must find a reason for being scatterbrained. They will soon find that one must avoid doing things that are later regretted, and will also find that complaints about one's foolish actions will not help. But people love these complaints. That is why they indulge in them and give themselves the appearance of a martyr. They think they will thus please themselves and others, but in reality their sentimentality is a burden to all. Their conscience will tell them that they are doing something wrong, but it does not order them to remain in a fallen state. Their indecisiveness is the reason, together with vainness and egotism. When William the Conqueror set foot on the soil of England, it is said that he tripped and fell to the ground. But he did not remain there whimpering, although probably his knees were hurting. But took a handful of soil and called out, "With these fists I seize England." Such nice stories should be translated only into the spiritual, so that we can see how focused, collected people can always turn incidents to benefit. Usually the tyrants, conquerors and children of this world give a good example to the more virtuous and spiritual about composure and focus. Certain old spinsters prefer, however, to turn their fellow beings into sheep, after the misunderstood example of the Good Shepherd, and condemn those who make fun of them. But can the man who cleaned out the temple and silenced the Pharisees and Sadducees and provided so much proof of self-control and heroic courage have been such a miserable, spiritless creature? And near the end of page 32. Benefactors must now be born. Unconscious puppets of flesh and blood of either sex we can do without. Mothers must realize that their time has come, the blessed time in which they may bear the Saviour. They need to consciously work on themselves and learn to understand the consequences of their actions. Why are women satisfied to see their dwellings as places of pleasure? Comfort and domesticity are good, but eternal religion is better. Michael tells me that the Baron wrote this when he was about 27.
I calculated that, Felix, just because he was born in 1889, which we'll get to in a moment. Thank you, Felix. And anything that you'd like to say from your reading of the book?
Well, I read it as I have a different understanding of that because I'm not a man.
Uh-huh.
so I did not relate to all this. How do you say that? To all these more things that were said, more than how your way of life should be.
Right.
But I find very much in it is Baba's teaching. So almost all of it is Baba's teaching.
And almost certainly, how's that for commitment? Almost certainly the Baron had not heard of Baba. Probably, 1916, possibly had not heard of Sufism. Can I waver between probably and possibly?
Disclaimer.
Disclaimer. Anything else, Annette?
But only what I don't know if people are interested in that.
We'll come to that
What
later.
I told.
Yeah, okay. Just two quick comments for me about the book. One is in Ross Keating's book on Francis Brabazon, Ross tells the story that the Baron served as a dispatch rider in World War One, and like Amrit's father Kumar, who you may know the story of Kumar being held in jail and making a pact with God. Baron von Frankenburg, facing the horrors of war, made a pact with God. If you get me out of here, I will serve you. And I have not been able to. I don't know where Ross got that story from, but I take it as valid. So even though the war went from 1914 to 1919, he was discharged well before the end of the war, and presumably wrote this. If it was published in 1916, I'm assuming he wrote it in 1915 or sometime in 1916, at a guess. The other thing I wanted to say was, from just what Felix has told me just now, and from what Donata told me, this is a very passionate and very confident document for a 27-year-old. There's a lot of fire in it, I think. There's an intensity that I think is quite. Not that we weren't like that at 27, but I was struck by the power and conviction of his words.
It's a lot of wisdom.
Yes, yeah,
That is unusual.
yeah. Joanna?
I'm just astounded by the humour in it.
Yes.
That to me
Pig
is
butchers?
a new aspect of his character.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's what I hope will come out of today's meeting, is that we may get a broader sense of his character.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next thing that happens chronologically is that the Baron, as I mentioned earlier, the Baron comes to Hazrat Inayat Khan's summer school in the suburb of Paris known as Suresnes, Suresnes, pronounced Suresnes if you're... Where's Patricia? Good, close enough?
We're very close.
Merci beaucoup. And I'm a little bit unclear about this. He attended the summer school, which continues to this day, by the way. He attended the summer school in 1925 and 1926. And I think it's Celia or someone says he studied with Inayat Khan for 6 months. Whether it was 6 months in 1926 or whether it was a total of 6 months, I'm not clear. But he did attend the Sufi summer school of 1925 and 1926. And this is an image of Hazrat Inayat Khan. It had a code on it of 1926, and I don't know if it's the date or whether it's just a coding of photographs or scans. From the look, from the grey in his beard and the grey in his hair, I'm thinking it might be 1926. Alan's nodding.
I think it's in that ballpark.
In that ballpark, yeah. And this is the Baron's home. I wish you could see it in full colour, because it's a magnificent building. This is the Baron's home, still owned by his descendants, still lived in by his descendants. In Suresnes is about 10 kilometres from the centre of Paris in a northwesterly direction, in the direction of La Défense, if anyone knows Paris. I'm just faking it a bit here, so. This is some early Mureys, and this is their chariot.
Michael?
Yes, Sam.
You're saying that was the Baron's house?
That's the Baron. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Thank you, Sam. Excuse me. It's been a long morning already. It's Hazrat Inayat Khan's house, originally on a large plot of land. A couple of things are curious to me about it. One is built from stone, and Francis builds May a house from stone. And what the connection might be there. The original plans. There's a book in the library, a biography of Hazrat. It's essentially an autobiography of Hazrat Inayat Khan, and there's a photograph of this house standing on an empty field in the 1920s. And Hazrat Inayat Khan had quite extensive plans for a university, I think for accommodation. It was going to be a large centre. This is a very large home. unusually large, by Paris standards. But that didn't materialise. And interestingly, the original plans for Mayor House included a stage. I think it was much more extensive than what was eventually built. So again, possibly some inspiration here, which I'll come back to.
Well, it's just also,
Yes.
Michael, with regards to the land around it, we were told that after the war, there was a great need for residential land, so any land that wasn't sort of immediately being used was compulsorily sort of taken up for accommodation. So there was originally a lot more land around it, but which was taken after the war because they so desperately needed accommodation.
Thank you, Joanne. I'd forgotten that. Joanne, Bernard, and Ivan and I had a long conversation with Sheikh Farid. We don't know. It was a Dutch man. Yeah.
And Michael,
Yes, Bernard.
I just mentioned how this gentleman had many of the attributes of Mr. Francis Brabazon.
Yes, including a certain gruffness.
He arrived unannounced and he started long explanations as to why we were here and what we were interested in. He, just like Francis, interrupted and said, "Just get to the point."
This meeting hall, I'm guessing was not built in the time that the Baron went to Suresnes, just from the construction of it.
It's part of the home.
It's part of the home, it's on the edge of the home. Okay. Yeah. This is a memorial to Noor Inayat Khan. Though most of you will know that Hazrat Inayat Khan had 4 children. The oldest daughter, Noor Inayat Khan, volunteered to be a radio transmitting person for the French resistance. She was living in England, was an English citizen, and it was considered that the most high-risk job you could do, pretty much in the war. The life expectancy was, I think, 9 months. That's all you were expected to live for. And she was captured, she was betrayed and captured, interrogated and executed in Dachau. Very recently, a memorial statue to her has been put up somewhere in London.
And strangely enough, one of the funny little coincidences is that one of her pseudonyms that she took when she was in the resistance was to use the surname Renier, which is my island family name.
Then what was the name again?
Renier.
Renier. Thank you. Thank you. And her name means light. And her name means light. Yep. Yeah.
Alan's going to go on and on. Still yet more?
It's your choice. Yeah.
No,
Go on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Vilayat Khan, one of Inayat Khan's sons, met Baba, and Baba gave him a very interesting message, which I can only paraphrase as something like, be careful you don't assume more than you actually are entitled to spiritually. Is that a fair paraphrase, Alan? Something like that?
Yeah, that turned out to be very prophetic.
Yes, yes. Hidayat Khan, another son, so there was 2 daughters and 2 sons. Hidayat Khan is still living in Germany, and he's an accomplished composer and violinist. And Chris Wilde, who most of you know, and my sister Jenny Keating met him just a couple of years ago. And he has contact with Baba people in the San Francisco Bay Area. My good friend Sherry had a note from him a few years ago. So he doesn't follow Baba, but he has a sort of an acceptance and an informal connection with the Baba community. Alan, please jump in with anything you can add. Okay. This is a couple of shots from this beautiful home. It was just really gorgeous. Unfortunately, that rose bush died when I went back 2 years ago. So
What did you do to it?
I don't know. I didn't. The Baron's passport.
Hey, that's a Swiss passport.
That's a Swiss passport. Yep. Yep. And by the way, Joanne mentioned his mother, Jessie von Frankenburg. She was living in Switzerland when she passed away in 1936. So
He did go to a bit of trouble to get Swiss nationality rather than German. There's a complicated story there, but
yeah. And there's a lot of connections with Switzerland, which I'll come to briefly. This is the what do you call this? The title page in the 3 languages of Switzerland, and this is translated by Donata. So born 2nd of January 1889. I forgot to say, his parents were married in St. Paul's Church in San Francisco. He's born in St. Paul, Minnesota, in America. So he was entitled to an American passport, presumably. 175 centimetres. What's that in feet?
5'10".
5'10". Dark brown hair, etc. That's just a slightly better photograph. Oh, not on the screen. This is the stamp that I want to draw your attention to. I'm guessing it says 24th of February, but it's only a guess. Any other guesses?
The 24th, yeah.
Maybe 21st, maybe 24th. So this is the day that the Baron arrived, presumably by ship from Europe in Fremantle. And Fremantle's on the west coast of Australia. And as I said, help me out, mathematical whizzes here. How many? If Hazrat Inayat Khan died on the 5th of February 1927, 5 from 24 is 19 days, something. And how they may be connected, whether it's just
I don't think they would be really, because that number of days wouldn't be nearly long enough to get
to pack and sail. Yes, I agree. Yeah, I agree. So now we get into the trove, the newspaper articles. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just summarise what we'll see and whip through it fairly quickly. Steve and Chris have been practising for hours on their reading skills.
I was up all night.
But there seem to be 4 themes to the newspaper articles, and as I said, there's about 50 of them. So one is the Baron's own writing. He occasionally submitted articles to the Sydney Morning Herald and a couple of other newspapers, and they mostly seem to be concerned with this visit to Abyssinia and a meeting with the Emperor of Abyssinia. Was it Haile Selassie in that? Wow, I never made that connection until just this moment. So he writes about that, and that his meeting with the Emperor is in Trove. So there's 3 or 4 articles of his writings about, and they seem to be pretty much only about this trip to Abyssinia, which he undertook in late 1926, so after the summer school of Suren. The second group of articles, I'm going in order of importance, I think, in my mind. There's a series of articles that are about, I don't know what to say, titled folk. You know, Baron and Baroness von Frankenburg met, you know, Viceroy, da-da-da-da-da. So there's a series of articles of sort of, what do you call that, social page stuff?
The Woman's Weekly of...
Yes, of the Times, yes. Now it's, I guess, pop stars, and then it was royalty. Titled folk. I can't separate the next 2 clusters. So one cluster is a series of articles about the Baron, the announcement about Inayat Khan's book, the visit of Rabia Martin in 1939, and then there's a very poignant cluster of about, at least, I'll say 8 to 10, 2-line ads, advertisements, announcing the Baron will give talks in Melbourne, Sydney, various places. And to me, in those 2 lines, there's a real heroism, that this is a man who singly was going around for 2 decades, talking to people about Sufism and about Hazrat Inayat Khan. I think pretty much alone, from what I can tell. And for me, there's an interesting echo with the life of Hazrat Inayat Khan, because he essentially did that in Europe. You know, Hazrat Inayat Khan and the Baron seem to be driven to go to great distances, just a second, and speak publicly about Sufism and about spirituality. Sam.
Well, Francis explained a little bit to me that it was because of the, this is how I remember, it's a long time ago now, but there was some land that the Baron inherited at Camden.
Okay.
And he actually asked Inayat Khan, what will I do with it? And Inayat Khan told him to go to Australia and spread Sufism.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, thank you, Sam. That's what you call the missing link. I did not know that. I always assumed it, but I didn't know it. Or if I knew it, I'd forgotten it. Thank you very much. Is that being recorded, George? Yep. Beautiful. Thanks a lot. So let me just whip through. So this is 1935. This shorter notice. Steve, can you read that off the screen?
Shorter notices. Education. By the late Hazrat Inayat Khan, founder and leader of the Sufi movement. No, I can't.
Deals.
I'm sorry.
Chris, sorry.
Deals with the training of the infant
Go ahead.
child
Rob.
and youth in a simple, practical way, which shows a penetrating and sympathetic understanding of the child mind. Behind the severely practical knowledge
Lies a warm
idealism.
Education is defined in that broadest
Sense as culture, refinement, the knowledge of external
Thank
life,
you, Jim.
and of inner life, understanding of human nature, realization of self. There is much wisdom in this beautifully written book, which was delivered in lecture form in Paris and published in Holland. Baron von Frankenburg, head of the Sufi movement, Australian branch, Camden, New South Wales. Herr Otto Lehmann, who served in the German Army Medical Corps.
Oh no, that's sorry, Pradeep. That's someone else.
Sorry.
Someone else. No problem.
It there?
Yeah. That's lost in the. That person was lost in the sands of time. But he's remembered at Abode. Here, Otto Lehmann. I'm holding this up just for appearance's sake. Please, Joanne.
His sympathetic understanding of the child mind from this child that was in when I called the Baron Mr. Uncle, he was totally unsympathetic to the child mind. In other words, he didn't have a clue how to relate to this child anyway. I just...
Okay, thanks, Joanne. But Bernard has a, as I've mentioned earlier, a delightful letter from the Baron, which gives another perspective. I also want to mention that my mother was very influenced by this book on education, and I think she influenced some of the young mothers in the 1970s. Yes, correct, Ross? Yeah. The one, I've not read it, although it's still in print, I believe. It's still available. It stood the test of time, as you would imagine, because Hazrat Inayat Khan, as Barbara said, was a fifth plane saint.
I have that.
You have it?
You can read the entire thing online.
Oh, okay, thanks. Just one thing that I think my mother got very strongly from this book is the importance of impressions and what young children are exposed to. So she was stubbornly devoted to this notion. Bless her heart. Which, you know, meant, for example, we couldn't have chewing gum.
Or comics.
Or comics. So when Nariman, one of Barbara's monthly, offered me chewing gum here, I had to decline because I knew my mother wouldn't approve. I love her dearly. So those are the four themes that I saw: that the Baron's writing, the aristocratic cluster, the stories, the articles on Sufism, and Rabia Martin, which we'll get to in a moment, and then these announcements. So maybe I'll just, instead of, I was going to read these off, but have these read off, but let's whip through. This is the passing of the Baron's mother in 1936 in Switzerland. So I'll just whip through. This is just a very minor interest. I don't know who Mrs. Cummings was. This is a vice-regal announcement. Is this okay with everyone if I just whip through?
Yes.
This is the Courier Mail in Brisbane, and that's the Baron and the Baroness, as you can see in the centre. I got very excited. I spent $49 or something and rode away to Trove, thinking I would get a photograph of this, but in fact I just got the newsprint again, so it was quite disappointing.
The Courier Mail might have it in their archives.
That would be fantastic. Yeah.
Which is the Baroness, on the left or the right?
On the right. Yeah, it's two photographs put together.
Okay.
Right?
Did you find out where he stayed in Brisbane?
No, I don't know. And why he would be in Brisbane, I don't know either.
Yeah, it was.
The Treasure View Hotel. Yes, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah. This is worth reading. Whose turn is it? Steve? Let me zoom in. Did you all this one? Is that enough, Steve?
Give it a go. If I'm faltering, give it another hit. Visiting Melbourne at present, from their country home at Camden, New South Wales, are Baron and Baroness von Frankenburg, who recently returned from tour abroad, during which they visited Switzerland, England and the United States. Baron von Frankenburg, whose full title is Baron von Frankenburg und Ludwigsdorf, is the official representative in Australia of the International Sufi Society, which has its headquarters in San Francisco. Based upon a mystical philosophy derived from ancient Greece, the modern development of the society came with the visit to Europe in 1910 of the Indian prince Inayat Khan. During their tour abroad, Baron and Baroness von Frankenburg visited the Society's headquarters and also met many of the independent groups in England and Europe. The Society's aims and ideals appeal to many intellectual and cultured people who view the present world unrest and turmoil with growing anxiety. Baroness von Frankenburg is Australian by birth, and she spoke of the wonderful sense of peace and prosperity to be found in Australia today, compared with the nervous tension felt on all sides in Europe. I don't think any of us realise, she said, how blessed we are to be in this free and lovely land. When you see the anxiety and trouble in so many countries, you begin to appreciate the marvellous living conditions here.
Thank you, Steve. That'll do. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Today, huh?
Yes, yes, yeah. Now, this is a very interesting moment. Chris, could you hold that for a second? Let me just zoom back out. So Chris is going to read this off the screen, and so go ahead.
Off there.
Off there, you.
Please.
Yeah. Okay. Just a second. I know everyone in the room can read. I just think it focuses our attention. Is that enough? One more.
She's doing very well.
On a short visit to Adelaide, Mrs. Rabia Martin, the head of the Sufi movement of the Western world, and Baron F.E. von Frankenburg of New South Wales, who was in charge of the Australian branch of the movement, arrived by train from Melbourne yesterday. The Sufi order was founded in the West by Pir or Murshida Inayat Khan, a mystic, poet, philosopher and musician born in Baroda, India in 1883. Inayat Khan was descended from 18 generations of spiritual teachers and 5 generations of musicians. He devoted his life to spreading a message of the fundamental unity of humanity. Mrs. Martin was the first disciple of Inayat Khan in the West, and since 1911 she has devoted her life to the mission of Sufism. When Inayat Khan died in 1927, she became his successor.
Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah.
Yep, thanks, Chris. Just from the newspaper articles, it seems she went to, this is the Courier Mail, so that's not her, that's not Rabia Martin on the right. So she came to Brisbane, and she would have come to Sydney. Yeah, so that was a momentous time. This was before Rabia Martin knew of Baba. By the way, in all of this, there are little discrepancies on dates. I mean, and you just got to, just roll with it. I mean, just as a very quick example, the Wikipedia article on the Baron says that he was born in Germany, but the ASIO file, which I'm more inclined to trust, says he definitely was born in the US.
It also points out, Michael, that Inayat Khan was only about 45 or something when he died.
Yes, that's true.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Sam. I didn't know that. Now we have this. As I said, there's something for me very touching about these little ads, and the image I form is of the Baron going to these halls and people, turning up or not turning up, and doing it repeatedly in different Australian cities. So this one, the topic: Sufi training for self-realization. Persian poets. A course of lectures on the ancient mystic Sufi poets of Persia and other Oriental Sufi teachers.
Michael, I just want to ask, did
Yes,
your family meet?
Sorry?
Did your family meet Rabia too then?
No, because
Reg told me when he was alive that he'd met Rabia, and I wondered, have you heard that, Roy?
No.
Yeah, because he pointed that he sat with me at the Karen pointed that I met. I met him, he wouldn't say him or her.
Yes.
Yeah. But,
how interesting.
Yeah, so I just wondered.
No. Rabia came in 1939. My parents didn't hear about Sufism or Baba till about 47.
But the Baron and Rabia were being at the same time in Sydney.
The Baron was the host.
I see.
Yes, I mean, that Rabia came, I've always assumed, hosted by Inayat Khan, the Baron, and accompanied by the Baron to these various places. Yes, yeah, in 39, yeah. I actually don't know that. Unfortunately, I don't know Reg's life story. So
Joanne's done a beautiful job of it.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
Oh, did I get that wrong?
No, that's right.
These are some of the very few photographs of the Baron, both of them courtesy of Bernard from his father's collection.
Not the one on the right.
Not the one on the right. Okay. The one photograph that I know of, again, it's not a good quality photograph, but it's even worse on the screen than it is on in actuality.
What year is that?
Do not know, John. Do not know.
What do you think?
Well, Francis looks like it's the 40s.
Right.
Francis looked the same for decades.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The car is an early 50s kind of a
Depends on the car bus here.
Yes.
It's not the Triumph.
No, it's not the Triumph. I forgot to mention the Triumph. Then we have I'm going in chronology here. Those photographs were just a kind of an orientation. Chris, do you have that in front of you? This German. So, are there any lawyers in the room?
What are you asking?
Are there any lawyers?
Oh, lawyers. I saw German speaking.
I saw.
Yes, German speaking.
I saw. Is it Mayra Saunders was here, but she's not here today.
No, she's on Friday.
There's a few legal terms that I don't understand. Steve, would you hold this for a second? Let me just zoom in on this. So there are two court cases, and maybe Joanne knows really what was going on. One of them was about. Well, I actually don't know what it was about. Chris, can you read that?
Which battalion? Oh, that one.
What date did Francis meet the Baron?
Well, that's another unanswered question. There's various figures, but roughly 1940. 1940, yeah. As a kind of average of John Grant's comment, I think Ross Keating's comment, and I'm just sort of averaging them off to about 1940.
Beryl says 40 or 41.
Sorry, Bernard?
Francis had been discharged from the army before he met his friend.
And that was in 40.
I don't know when he was discharged.
Okay. You go ahead.
Wednesday, November 18th, 1942. Tell me if I'm getting it wrong.
No, you're sorry.
Claimed inheritance in Australia, Sydney, Tuesday. He had served as a lieutenant in the German army in the last war, but had later, become
A Swiss citizen.
Swiss citizen, and, so that he could travel to Australia to claim an inheritance. This statement was made by Baron Friedrich von Frankenburg and Ludwig of Spring Hill Farm, Camden, in the Equity Court today. He was claiming rectification.
That's the word I don't know what that means. I guess improving, rectifying, putting right. Yeah.
Of a deal of settlement made in April 1830 between his mother and himself, under which she agreed to make certain payments to him, and he contracted to pay certain sums to the dependents mentioned. Under a decree of the Swiss court, he was liable to pay certain sums for the maintenance of his divorced wife, their son, and his illegitimate daughter.
Nice word.
He stated that he had inherited about £90,000 from his grandfather.
That's a lot of money. That's a big sum.
Yes. Brian Fowler, Sue Fowler's brother, who's worked in banking all of his career, he's given me some approximate calculations. And for example, the Baron's estate that when the Baron died was 144,000, and Brian calculated that to be $7 million. So this is something, in that range of $5-6 million in buying power in our terms. So very large sums of money are involved. Yes. So the Baron had a relationship with someone in Switzerland with whom he had a daughter. The Baron then married another, I always stumble over the word here, titled woman in Germany, with whom he had a son, Joachim, Joachim, and then he married Olive or Stella Taylor, also known as Lila in Sufi circles. Joanne, you look like you're busting to say something.
Just a very intriguing little infuriating thing that happened in my early days at Abode, before I knew anything much at all. This taxi came into Abode, stopped, and this gentleman got out and wanted to know where Francis Brabazon was, and it was the Baron's son. And so I directed him around the hill, and then told Bernard's mother, who was absolutely bursting with frustration. He then we watched it, and then they only stayed about half an hour and went out. So it was very frustrating. But I subsequently wondered whether it was something to do with the inheritance.
Yes, it seems a reasonable speculation. Does anyone know anything about that, the son, presumably Joachim's visit to Francis? No. And I gather Francis apparently never said anything to anyone about that. So,
Michael, that court case is about the Baron putting a proposal that he's responsible to pay that sum be discharged.
Oh, okay.
And he lost.
Oh, thank you, David. That's what you read into that just now?
Well, I've read it on Trove. It's
okay.
It's an interesting account. It was an attempt to be discharged from his responsibility.
Right, okay.
Which was unsuccessful.
Okay. Thank you, that's great. I didn't get that. I'm just going to continue here. He fails in his court action. This is more about the court. Another lecture, The Wisdom of the East Applied to Western Civilization. And I didn't crop this because it's a very interesting juxtaposition. So the next thing down is Krishnamurti, latest lectures and discussions by Krishnamurti And then the next one down is the Presbyterian Church of Victoria.
This is
and-
all Melbourne.
Yeah, this is all the Argus, Melbourne. And the other thing that struck me is the $2 shilling charge, which I thought was interesting. Some of the Baron's lectures, talks were free, and some of them he charged for, which I thought was interesting. He obviously didn't need the money, but...
It's cheaper than Krishnamurti.
This is another lecture. The wisdom of the East applied to Western civilization. This one, the wisdom of the East applied to Western civilization. Those, I think, were on successive days in different locations. 2 shillings. Mankind at the hour of cosmic dawn. 2 shillings. This is a very interesting title. The passion play of self-realization on the stage of life. The passion play of self-realization on the stage of life. That seems to be the same location, so maybe he did it on several nights. How are we to combine religious truth with our modern life? You can see what he's interested. I hear echoes of this in what Felix read. How are we to combine religious truth with our modern life? In 19... So that takes us through, let me just think if I've left anything out. I mentioned already that in 1946, about mid-46, the Baron supported Francis travelling to Fairfax to wait for Baba and or accompany Rabia Martin to India to meet Baba. And I've had the good fortune of being able to visit that place because coincidentally friends of mine own the Fairfax Sufi Centre. So I get to go there, I get to see what I imagine was Francis's bedroom, although I don't know. I get to see the path that Francis built that's still there. And so Francis came back in 1949, Francis came back in 1947, I think September-ish of 47, I'm guessing. And this is a very interesting date here. What's on the next slide? I think it's the 5th of February 1949, Francis buys the land at Beacon Hill to build Mayor House. He's Bernard Francis Brabazon of North Kirkwall, librarian. Very, very curious things. I spent my youth on North Kirkwall Beach, so I know North Kirkwall intimately, because when you walk from Beacon Hill to the coast, you have to, North Kirkwall's the closest beach, so I spent my youth there. I had no idea that Francis had lived there.
I think he may not have.
He may not have, thank you.
Because when he went to America later, when it said, what do you do? He said he's an Australian representative.
Oh, okay.
He was very good at inventing things.
Right, yes, for the bureaucracy.
And the librarian comes from...
Yes.
Well, the librarian, my auntie Betty Burston, who some of you have met, who passed away just a year or two ago, she worked with Francis at the Victorian State Library in the 30s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so they were buddies long before Sufism and Baba and all of that. So he was a librarian. He was an impossible employee, Betty says. He'd be buried in books. Betty tells this story where a man comes into the library, strips naked, causes a tremendous fuss in the library, and eventually it's dealt with. And Betty says to Francis, well, what did you make of that? And Francis goes, what? He was absorbed in a book, it all went past his head. So this gives the date somewhere. The 7th of February 1949, and then I think the transfer of title, which is different, happened in 2 days later. But the thing this is to me a very significant piece of information, because what it means is that the Baron who died on March 30th, 1950, was living for, is that 15 months? For 15 months. while Francis had bought the land and started building Mayor House. So I'm guessing, and I feel quite confident doing this, that they must have had in-depth consultations with each other about Mayor House, the design of it, the materials, the big beams in the roof, in the ceiling of Mayor House are Douglas fir for Alan's sake, or we call it Oregon. The stone may have been influenced by Suresnes, Paris. John Grant talks about stone holding impressions from the Avatar's visit, as in John Grant's book Practical Spirituality. Francis built a meditation walk in Fairfax, California. He occupied himself building a meditation walk from the rock, which is a rocky outcrop which Hazrat Inayat Khan meditated on, to the Kaaba Allah, which is the house of God, which was a 3-story building. Is Alan still in the room? Okay. A 3-story building that burnt down on the New Year's Eve of 1949. But Francis had built this meditation walk, this path, which still exists to this day. And at Mayor House, he did the same thing again. He built a meditation walk, and I've got some stills of that, which we may get to. But the main thing I wanted to say was, the Baron and Francis, the Baron must have been involved in the beginnings of Mayor House for 15 months.
And would have provided the money.
And would have, and I've always understood by sort of oral history that the Baron provided the money. That Brian gave me a figure for that sum of was £179.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got it on my phone. I'll have to look it up if I get to it.
Joanna had a...
How big is the land there at Beacon Hill?
It was an acre. It's a bit confusing because it was more than an acre because the Adams family had another block. So the original block, and the maps are visible online. The original block was an acre, and in the early to mid 60s, Bill subdivided 2 blocks on the edges and sold them off to pay for the publishing of the Everything and the Nothing. So it's now Mayor House itself and then Ross and Jenny's property together probably is about half an acre. Yeah, it's still a sizable block of land. The meditation path still exists. The stage area that Francis built, along with the Adams family and maybe the Bruford kids, is still there. Very overgrown, but still visible. Francis's original cabin is still there.
What was Joanna's comment?
It's really a question because I always understood that Mayor House, as it is now, was originally conceived as a place for barber. Now, this would indicate that because I also have in my ears, I've heard that Baron von Frankenburg didn't say that he accepted barber until he died, until just before he died.
Yeah.
So this was established, must have been established, the thought must have been that it was a Sufi establishment, not originally for barber.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Joanna's gotten to the heart of an important matter here, maybe the most important matter. And there's 2 things. So one is the Baron's relationship with Barber, and as I said, there's at least 3 realities, and then there's my guess. I'll throw that in as well. And there's a Sydney Morning Herald article, which we'll get to in a moment, quite important, that talks about exactly this issue. So just briefly, in Practical Spirituality, John Grant, who was I believe, very factual, very accurate, very meticulous, he writes, and I've got it on, I probably won't get to it, but he writes, the Baron did not accept Barber. Bill LePage says the Baron remained ambivalent about Barber. Vernon, over to you. What did your dad say?
I don't do that. I asked my father specifically the question, did the Baron accept Barber as the avatar? And my father's answer was, I don't know, but I think so. The fact that he had
financed Francis to go to America to wait for Barbara.
Yeah.
The fact that he had bought land, leave the land out, but most importantly, my father's take on it was that the Baron's Sufi name was Mormon, which means the faithful one. And my father's take was that, yes, he accepted Barbara, but never publicly.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Just
My-
before he
yeah, go
died
ahead.
is what I heard.
Okay.
Yeah, that he said yes, he used that.
Yeah. Thank you, Joanne. I'd not heard that.
And also, Michael, this comes back to the period when Francis was living with the Baron and his wife.
Yep.
While she was doing the washing up, they used to read the discourses of Barbara and discuss them. That's what I don't know whether you're going to say that, but
I think Steve was going to read something from that. I'm very conscious of the time. I'm very conscious of Alan. So why don't I? And I'm really conscious that Chris and Steve have done a lot of work in preparing. Chris was up all night rehearsing. Joanne and Bernard visited Camden and talked to people that knew the Baron. I think we're just going to have to do this another time. So let me finish off with just a couple of things that I think are quite crucial. Just probably two things. So these are just shots of Beacon Hill. This is Mayor House being built. This is the Baron passing away, and this is a notice. He passed away on March 30th, 1950. This is his obituary, 6th of April 1950. Now this is, Steve, would you mind reading this? I'll just zoom in for you. This is a really important document, I think, although, well, I won't say anything more. Young. Only I knew keynote better. No.
it's all there.
Go down again.
Yeah.
I think I can read.
It's better if it was smaller, Michael.
Talking to people who were there in the 50s, apparently his funeral in Camden was a huge event. Incredibly well attended by people from so many different organisations.
Okay. Friedrich Elliot von Frankenburg in Ludwigsdorf, freeholder of Camden, who died on March 30th, aged 61, left an estate of £144,196.
Excuse me, and Brian says that the current value of that is just over $7 million.
He bequeathed £500 to the Masonic Royal Arch Chapter, Campbelltown, and other amounts to friends and relatives. He left the remainder to his wife, Olive Pauline, and provided that, in the event of her predeceasing him, the residue was to go to Bernard Francis Brabazon of Beacon Hill, Brookvale, on condition that Brabazon was willing to succeed him as Australian representative of Sufism and would neither add nor take away from the teachings of Inayat Khan, and would continue to administer and promulgate these teachings in the same manner as he had done the Baron, had done in Australia.
Thank you, Steve. So very interesting. I don't know what to make of it, but there it is.
One comment that Francis gave me was
Yes,
that
Sam.
Inayat Khan made one big mistake. He started talking. He should have stuck to music.
It's interesting he was a Mason if he was also a Catholic.
But he would have started off as a Catholic and then moved on.
Yeah, his funeral, his passing was noted by the Masons and also these other organisations. Just very, very briefly, I hear echoes of Princess Narina Machiavelli in his association with aristocracy, and I hear associations. I hear reverberations with Elizabeth Patterson, who maintained strong connections with the Christian community in Myrtle Beach, and the Baron seemed to have that same universality. Almost finished, folks. That's the passing of Layla. This is the Baron's estate, full of all sorts of goodies, some of which may still be hidden in Beacon Hill. This is just thing I stumbled upon. Francis had an ad. The Baron's ASIO file, a very interesting story. One of the most interesting things is he was, as I said, he was followed for the whole duration of the war, and all sorts of terrible rumours were put out about him. And when I told my Auntie Betty about this, and because she and her husband John, who's my mother's brother, they appear in this file, and Betty was just outraged. She said, "How dare they? How dare they investigate our spirituality?" For me, it's amusing and kind of intriguing to read, but she was furious that her spirituality was on show to the spies of the world.
She was a private lady.
All those letters were. I remember your dad had a whole collection of them. Between Layla and the Baron, and they were all being opened. They with the stamp.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So he couldn't even talk with it. He couldn't even write letters to his wife about the meeting.
Yes, and
should ask who's here from ASIO. Put their hand. Who's here from ASIO? Anyone? Yes.
This is a very interesting letter. I've just got two more things to show you. This is a very interesting letter. This seems to be a transcription of a letter that the Baron wrote to Murshida Martin. And I was a little reluctant to even show it because it seems very personal and very private. But it's very. The Baron talks about his doubts and about himself at a very personal level. And I'm going to scroll on before Di gets a chance to read it, despite putting her glasses on. And unfortunately, Joanne and Bernard, I asked them to talk about this, and we won't have a chance. This is a beautiful moment. Oh. Bernard, could you read this, please, off the screen? Can you see it? I can zoom in.
I think everyone can read it, can't they?
Well, it'll focus.
Yes. My dear little Bernard, I sent you and Joanna a packet yesterday containing a torch for each of you. When you light it in the dark, remember Mr. Uncle Norman, who loves you very much, and because you are so nice and gentle. Yours truly, Uncle Norman.
I've just got to say that when Mr. Uncle was in the house, my mother, who was was a disciplinarian, but you never knew. Like, we were very, very good kids.
Yep.
And we tiptoed. When he was in the house, we literally tiptoed.
Yeah.
We were very, very careful not to cause a noise, not to disturb him, not to disturb his meditation and all of that.
Yeah.
But as well as that letter, can I just say that he, my memory of this is that he presented these torches to us. Mummy organised a little conference at the table in the sitting room, and we were all there, and Mummy says, Mr. Uncle wants to give you a present, and he gave us these torches, and he said, as well as what's there, which I don't remember, what I remember is, when you light these torches, remember the light in your heart.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you, Joanna.
It's worth saying.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. These are wonderful photographs. It's hard to see on the screen. May Lundquist is there, the Adams family, Gladys Stewart, Reg Paffel,
is Beryl there?
Paul Adolphus, Laurie Adolphus. Beryl's not there, I don't think. I'm sorry, they're
Mary
great.
Rose's mother.
Murray Rose's mother is in the white, or which one is she? Bernard, do you know? You guessing?
No, I can't tell from here. There was a program on Murray Rose which showed photos of the mother, and that was the face that's in.
Oh, interesting.
So where is that?
So that's in the garage next to Mayor House, I believe. And this is the front of Mayor House. That's May in the foreground. May, I think, on the left. The Adams, Clarice Adams and Cynthia. I skip through here. I'm just going to find one passage to finish with. Alan, thank you for your patience.
Great.
This, oops, went too far. This is, I gave a talk at Mehrabad just a few months ago, I think it was. And in the audience was Bevan, whose last name I don't know, a woman who lives at Mehrabad. And Bevan Robinson. She gave me this letter just spontaneously, which Francis had written to the Australian group, and it's really a beautiful letter. And I'm sure other people have seen it, and I've sent it on to Bernard and to other people. But the thing that I wanted to read was this. I'm going to need to zoom in. Could you put that zoom? So we have thrown up into the air the question of the Baron's relationship with Barber. How did the Australian Barber group segue from Sufism to Barber? And this letter really has a lot in it, I think. But I just want to finish on this paragraph, which I think is so beautiful. Thanks, Steve. If it hadn't been that Pir o Murshida, that's Rabia Martin, of our order, had sufficient spiritual insight to recognise the fact that this was an avataric age, and that the avatar was on earth at the moment, and by her example and leadership, led us to the same conclusion. So the whole credit, if one can use such a word, for whatever we are allowed to do for Baba, or whatever blessings he gives us, is to our peer. Maya Baba, Maharaj, Ki Jai. Jai Baba. Thank you very much.
Stunning, rich, and could have gone on for hours. My sense, David, can I check this out with you and Alan, was we have a kind of a 10-minute stretch time or something?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? 5 minutes. People.
We're going to shift the chairs round.